Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hello and welcome to another quick shot review for Cheap Shot Entertainment. This is the dedicated movie review channel for Cheap Shot Entertainment. As ever, I'm your host Luke and you are the Cheap Shot Nation. If you're listening to this on our podcasting channels, then thank you very much for joining us there. If you're here with us on YouTube, you know what to do by now. I'm going to look at today The Iron Claw, an A24 movie following the true story about the inseparable Von Erich brothers, the famous Von Erich family of wrestling from Texas, right down from their dad Fritz, down to David, down to Mike, down to Kerry and to Kevin. This family pretty much ruled their territory, the Texas territory, for world-class championship wrestling back in the 70s. And they were big. They were Hollywood stars, and they were putting on shows in huge venues before WrestleMania was even a thing. And these boys would just sell out venues just by being a Von Erich. Incidentally, the Von Erich name is not the one that they were born with. That was a completely different name. What they did is create a character in the name. They created the family in the name. And there are some give or take moments in this film. It's not all true, but most of the events are following along with what actually happened to the brothers. And if you look hard enough, there is documentaries. There's one in 1999. There's obviously The Dark Side of the Ring. If you want to know more about the Von Erichs, there's plenty of stuff online. But we're going to talk about the Iron Claw. Now, wrestling is one of those subjects that is, well, it's subjective, isn't it? You either love it or you hate it. You think it's fake. You think it's fixed. Whatever. I love it. I've always loved it right from being a boy. I used to watch wrestling on a Saturday afternoon with my parents, my grandparents, and used to go to the local swimming baths where they would have wrestling shows with the World of Sport here in the UK. And in America, it was just as big, if not bigger, around the same time. So I was born around the same time as WrestleMania had started, Hulkamania and all that kind of stuff. So I absolutely love wrestling. But back to the film. It is 2 hours and 12 minutes long, and it fills every inch of those 2 hours and 12 minutes with story, with drama. There's a bit of comedy in there, and obviously the wrestling. It's not a huge part of this film. You don't see wrestling all the time, but you do see little snippets of scenes which involve wrestling. And there's some give or take here. There's some Hollywood storytelling to some of this to make it more interesting. There was another Von Erich brother that they did not include to keep the runtime down. But it follows along the story of Kevin Von Erich, the last surviving Von Erich brother of this of this era, and how much their dad, his dad Fritz, wanted all the brothers to be in wrestling, following his footsteps. And his finishing move was the Iron Claw. And this move was devastating back in the day. When it clamped on, there was no getting out of it. And that's what makes wrestling fantastic. I love it. So a little bit of biography, a little bit of Hollywood here, and it all comes together in a wonderful film. Great film. I went to go and see this at the Quad in Derby, an independent cinema that's funded by art projects and things like that. So if you're in Derby, check it out. It is a wonderful building, got art projects on whilst the cinema's upstairs. It does star Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich, and he has bulked up for this. You've got Jeremy Allen White is playing Kerry Von Erich, perhaps more modern times the most recognisable Von Erich, because he played the Texas Tornado in WWE back in the 90s, early 90s, went up against Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, and won the Intercontinental Championship in there. But at this point, he had his issues with drugs and alcohol and couldn't really get away from the stuff. So didn't last very long in WWE. Also of note, he only had one foot, which is crazy. You've got Harris Dickinson playing David Von Erich, Maura Tierney playing Doris Von Erich, and Holt McCallany playing Fritz Von Erich. And they all do it really, really well. Even got Chavo Guerrero Jr. Playing the Sheik in this film. You've got lots of people in it. Bruiser Brody. He's not actually in it, obviously. He died a long time ago before this, but lots of recognisable faces from the wrestling world, and it's brilliant. So yeah, it shows the brothers, their ups, their downs, their conflict with each other, and most notably the Von Erich curse, which I don't think I'm spoiling anything by this. A lot of them die. But it's done in a way, even if you knew this, and I did going in, it's done in a way that's really, it really captures you. You feel for all the characters, and it's a very special thing when you've got quite a few characters, larger than life characters in real life, and you get to see how big these guys were. And I'm not talking about muscular, I'm talking about how popular they were. When one of them died, it was like a state funeral. It was a day of mourning, like when the Queen died. It was huge. It was huge. See, Sean Durkin does a fantastic job. Absolutely fantastic job. Like I say, late 70s, early 80s, these boys were big. Absolutely huge. And they play, some of the casting is fantastic. I will say this, the casting of Ric Flair, I suppose you probably couldn't get any better than someone doing an impression of Ric Flair, but for me, that didn't really work. That kind of took me out of the film for that scene, because I didn't believe the person playing Ric Flair was Ric Flair. That being said, the person they cast for Harley Race, Kevin Anton, did a fantastic job. Absolutely fantastic job. And they all do a fantastic job. And I'm not just picking on the guy who played Ric Flair. That's just the way it was written. But yeah, it's fantastic, and even if you're not a wrestling fan, I think there's a lot to enjoy, a lot to pick out in this film. The music, for example, is wonderful, like late 70s, early 80s rock music and all that kind of stuff. It's fantastic, wonderful film. And yes, it may be that I have the shutter shades on or whatever, the nostalgia and the fact that I do love professional wrestling. Take that away and I'd still like this film, I believe, because it is just wonderfully put together. It's, I saw in the cinema yesterday, I saw young, old, actual wrestlers. I went to go and see this with my friends who I'm training with at the Aspire Wrestling Alliance in Derby. And I never thought I'd actually get to see a wrestling film, a film about wrestling, in a cinema with actual wrestlers, former champions, future champions, tag team champions. They were all there yesterday, and it was great. It was really cool. It was a really nice day, actually, and it was topped off by that. So, yeah, the Iron Claw, if you're on the fence about it, I would give it a go. I don't think you'll be disappointed by this one at all. So we've got coming up, we've got One Love, Bob Marley, and a few others coming along as well. Actually, I had a bit of a nostalgia trip just before recording this, and actually went and watched The Mighty Ducks. I absolutely loved it. I still love it now. I loved it then, and it really got me into ice hockey, and I love ice hockey. So, yeah, I may do a classic nostalgia review on The Mighty Ducks as well, when Disney knew how to make films. They weren't just other people's ideas. But, The Iron Claw, absolutely fantastic. I'd give it a go. And with that, I'm going to leave you there. So thank you very much for listening to me ramble about this film. And if you've seen it, if you're planning to go and see it, tell me what you thought, because I'd love to hear from the perspective of perhaps someone who doesn't watch wrestling. Love to hear from the perspective of someone who doesn't actually participate in wrestling, because I couldn't help myself picking out the little bits that they were doing wrong with the footwork and stuff like that. But that's because I'm training and we get it drilled into us all the time. In fact, I'm still hurting from training yesterday, because we did that yesterday before we went out and before we went to the cinema. So, fun times. Anyway, I will see you next time. Thank you very much, film fans. Goodbye.
Hiya.